Hell is unfolding in Kupiansk. Ukraine's defense forces have pulled off the unthinkable. Russian units are trapped, supply lines are cut, and the city has turned into a deadly cauldron for the occupiers. Soldiers surrender and Moscow's claims of victory collapse in real time. Inside the Kremlin, panic is growing. Deadlines are missed, generals are under fire, and behind closed doors, the Russian general staff is drowning in chaos and losses reach record levels. Entire cities are reduced to ruins in a desperate attempt to hide military failure. Meanwhile, Europe is stepping in decisively. Germany delivers game-changing air defense systems and missiles, the UK boosts Ukraine's shield, and frozen Russian billions in Europe are preparing to strike back at Putin himself. Across the EU, political storms erupt, protests shake governments, and alliances are pushed to the limit. What is really happening, and why is the Kremlin losing control? Let's break down what's happening right now. Hello, this is Ukraine Today. Maria Farafonova here with the latest updates. Ukraine's defense forces, including the KRTS search and strike group, outmaneuvered Russian command on the Kupiansk axis. Instead of Moscow's claimed capture of the city, the Russian grouping found itself encircled with its logistics cut off. The Ukrainian armed forces operation unfolded amid constant Russian attempts to break into the city. After the defense forces blocked the occupiers' ability to infiltrate through gas pipelines, the enemy was forced to attempt crossings of the Oskil River. Russian tactics remain cannibalistic. Every day, dozens of untrained occupiers advance one by one toward Ukrainian positions like zombies.
The enemy is being destroyed at a rate many times higher, dozens of times higher relative to our forces.
On the battlefield, documents belonging to foreign mercenaries are being found regularly. One of the eliminated occupiers, Kenyan citizen Hope Ipala, entered Russia in September 2025, hoping to earn millions of rubles.
These are mercenaries. The personnel are untrained, and no one cares about them. By our estimates, we have eliminated at least 12 confirmed foreign mercenaries.
Meanwhile, the operation to liberate and clear Kupiansk is ongoing. Russian soldiers are surrendering or being neutralized, said Viktor Trehubov, spokesperson for the Dnipro Operational Strategic Group of Forces.
This operation will continue for some time. They have already been cut off from supplies, which is good. But now the city must be fully cleared of the Russian forces currently present.
According to Trehubov, urban combat is extremely complex. The defense forces are prioritizing the lives of their service members and civilians. In recent days, the occupiers have been surrendering. Among the prisoners are not only Russians, but also mercenaries from third world countries. However, he did not specify which countries. Regarding Vovchansk, Trehubov said the city has effectively ceased to exist and has been heavily destroyed. The situation there remains difficult. According to the serviceman, the Russians are pushing in from the north, while Ukrainians are holding the defense along the Vovcha River.
They deliberately destroyed it. Vovchansk, as a city with a population, had become unnecessary to them. They were trying to create a so-called security zone near the Russian border. To advance and hold such a zone so that Ukrainians would be unable to move further and threaten Russia's Kursk, Belgorod, and other regions.
Partisans reported chaos within Russia's general staff over tasks on Kupiansk and Pokrovsk that were failed under Gerasimov's command. The general staff of the armed forces of the aggressor state, Russia, is under intense pressure from the country's top political leadership due to missed deadlines for capturing Kupiansk in Kharkiv region and Pokrovsk in Donetsk region.
The trigger for this turmoil was Gerasimov's inability to ensure the fulfillment of key strategic objectives, the seizure of Kupiansk and the Pokrovsk-Myrnohorod agglomeration within the previously set timeframes.
According to officers, chaos reigns inside Russia's general staff offices. Atash expressed confidence that despite public claims that Ukrainian settlements had allegedly been captured long ago, the Kremlin understands the real situation on the front.
In an attempt to force the battlefield situation to match their reports and politicians' statements, the General Staff Command, under intense pressure, throws massive waves of its soldiers into attacks, ignoring the record-high losses seen recently.
The UK will invest £600 million to strengthen Ukraine's air defense. This was announced at a meeting of the Ukraine Defense Contact Group by UK Secretary of State for Defense John Healey. Kyiv will receive air defense systems, missiles, and automated turrets to shut down drones.
Ukrainians continue to fight with tremendous courage on both military personnel and civilians.
According to the UK Defense Secretary, these investments are critically important assistance to protect Ukrainian cities, towns, and critical infrastructure from Russian attacks.
Together with this group of 50 partners, we are working to deliver vital support for Ukraine's defense in order to put it in the strongest possible position to secure peace.
Meanwhile, Germany has delivered to Ukraine 2 additional promised Patriot systems and its 9th RST system. This was announced by German Federal Minister of Defense Boris Pistorius during the opening of the 32nd meeting of the Ukraine Defense Contact Group.
Since our last UDCG meeting, we have significantly strengthened Ukraine's air defense, including by delivering the 2 Patriot systems promised in August, made possible in part thanks to our Norwegian partners, as well as by delivering the 9th IRIS-T system.
Pistorius also said that next year Germany will deliver a significant number of AIM-9 Sidewinder missiles from its stocks to strengthen Ukraine's air defense.
In addition to financing one full package under the Pearl mechanism worth $500 million, we have provided an additional $200 million to procure urgently needed weapons and ammunition from U.S. stockpiles through NATO's Pearl mechanism. I am particularly grateful to Norway, the Netherlands, and Poland for the swift and pragmatic coordination of funding for these additional Pearl packages.
In addition, the head of Germany's defense ministry pointed to the implementation of agreements reached in the recently concluded defense industry cooperation deal between Ukraine and Germany.
We will strengthen cooperation between the defense industries of our 2 countries by leveraging existing capabilities. First and foremost, defense companies will jointly produce critically needed drones for Ukraine under the recently signed implementation agreement between Germany and Ukraine.
A record number of countries are ready to sign the Convention on Reparations for Ukraine. States attending the diplomatic conference in The Hague plan to set a record by approving an international treaty immediately after its creation, said Alan Bersey, Secretary General of the Council of Europe, opening the meeting in The Hague.
35 states will sign the convention establishing a compensation commission. This is unprecedented for the first day of an international treaty's existence.
The Secretary General did not specify which countries agreed to sign the document on the first day, but representatives of more than 50 states arrived in The Hague, not only from Europe but also from Latin America, as well as North America, Asia, and Australia. He emphasized that he sees a connection between this process and the peace process and believes in the power of international law.
The issue of accountability cannot be a footnote in peace negotiations. Accountability is at the center of every peace plan. The Council of Europe has no drones or missiles, but it has the power of law, international law that applies to everyone.
The governor of Russia's Belgorod region, Vyacheslav Gladkov, has reported a missile strike on the city of Belgorod, stating that the attack caused serious damage to critical engineering and utility infrastructure. According to local Russian social media channels, the strike may have hit a thermal power plant, which would explain the scale of the reported disruptions. However, these developments are far from the only bad news for the enemy. Beyond the rare area strikes and infrastructure damage, the situation for Russian forces is also deteriorating directly along the line of contact. More details on what is happening right now on the front line are coming up in our military overview.
Russia under attack. Moscow and the Moscow region were almost entirely on fire. On the morning of December 15th, the Russian Ministry of Defense claimed to have shot down 130 drones, including 25 over the Moscow region.
There will be a blackout in major industrial cities of the Russian Federation, primarily in the Russian Black Earth region and accordingly in Moscow region. I do not rule out the possibility of strikes on power generation facilities in Krasnodar Krai and Volgograd Oblast. That is within the range of Ukrainian UAVs and Ukrainian Bayraktars.
The head of Belgorod region, Vyacheslav Gladkov, reported a missile strike on his region and serious damage to engineering infrastructure. Local public channels report a strike on the CHP combined heat and power plant.
At this moment, Belgorod is effectively without power. The Russian authorities have been forced to acknowledge serious damage to what they call an engineering facility. This refers to strikes by the Ukrainian side on the Belgorod CHP.
It was loud because of the drone attack, according to Russian media reports in Rostov-on-Don. As a result, CHP-2 has ceased operations here. A raid was recorded at the oil refinery in Astrakhan, and the Astrakhan gas processing plant was also hit.
Throughout the entire period of the large-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine, Ukrainian drones have attacked oil and gas extraction rigs in the Caspian Sea. And this indicates an expansion in the geography of Ukrainian strikes. And starting from the new year, the production of 3 types is expected to be scaled up. Aeroballistic strike systems, specifically the Flamingo and the...
This is already Ukraine, temporarily occupied Crimea. Shore fighters are destroying 2 enemy radar systems. In this footage, National Guard fighters are destroying a Russian Tunguska on the temporarily occupied left bank of Kherson. In the Pokrovsk direction, due to a lack of logistics, the occupiers have to carry gasoline themselves. But even that doesn't save them from Ukrainian FPV drones, which are always ready, so to speak, to lend a hand.
At the moment, according to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Ukrainian Defense Forces maintain a presence in 16 square kilometers of the city's total built-up area. Pokrovsk.
In 2 days, almost everyone was destroyed. A Russian soldier reports the situation from Kupinsk.
I don't know how many of us, Sasha, are left. That's why. This is our group.
The occupier notes that his comrades were sent to the slaughter and it was their commanders who did this. In
Kupinsk, Russian assault groups with a total number of up to 200 people are blocked. There is no possibility for ground logistics. The main logistics are carried out using heavy UAVs. Moreover, the Russians themselves are posting videos on social media where Russian servicemen talk about how they took the last can of food. Stew from an elderly Ukrainian woman, because for several days the whole unit has basically been surviving on just water.
In the footage shot on a GoPro camera, it's no longer Russian commanders but Ukrainian scouts. The 92nd Brigade is clearing the forest belt of enemy forces. Short bursts, quick decisions, working without pauses. The result, -4 Russians. The soldiers write,
Frozen in Europe, Russia's billions will, after all, be put to work against Putin. For Ukraine, EU leadership has developed a mechanism to make this possible while bypassing objections from the Kremlin's friends, Fico and Orban. Orban is already trying to throw a wrench in the process and has drawn sharp criticism from diplomats. The real passion surrounding the Kremlin's money coming up next.
A reparations loan for Ukraine is getting closer. The EU has finally frozen Russian assets, eliminating one of the main dangers. It also deprives the Kremlin's main allies, Hungary and Slovakia, of the ability to block the transfer of money to Ukraine. Orban is furious, but it's not surprising.
There's absolutely nothing surprising about this behavior. Orban and his cronies are defending the Kremlin's interests against Ukraine. An anti-Ukrainian, Ukrainophobic policy is being pursued aimed at forcing Ukraine to capitulate so that Orban can gain certain assets as a result.
But let's take it one step at a time. For months now, the EU has been searching for loopholes to provide Ukraine with a reparations loan from frozen Russian assets, each time running into new resistance. But now a breakthrough is near. The European Union has prepared the technical groundwork to provide Ukraine with a reparations loan. The Council of the European Union has officially prohibited the transfer of frozen assets of the Russian Central Bank back to Russia and has also decided on the indefinite freezing of Russian assets located in Europe. The latter means that the EU will not return the frozen assets to Russia until it pays reparations to Ukraine.
This guarantees that Russian funds amounting to up to 210 billion euros will remain within the EU until Russia fully compensates Ukraine for the damage caused. We will continue to increase pressure on Russia until it starts taking negotiations seriously.
Until now, the freeze was extended every 6 months, which in turn created the risk that the funds could be unfrozen at the most inopportune moment. For example, Hungary might refuse to support the extension of the freeze next time. This could lead to a catastrophic scenario. The EU would have to return the money to Russia, but Russia has not yet paid war reparations to Ukraine, which would place the entire financial burden on the EU. Now that threat is gone. And as expected, Orban was outraged that Hungary was sidelined from the decision-making process.
This is a declaration of war, touching frozen Russian assets, appropriating them. This is a declaration of war. I have never seen a case where the seizure of 200 or 300 billion euros from a country did not provoke some form of response. That just doesn't happen.
Such an attack on the EU did not leave Poland's foreign minister Radosław Sikorski indifferent. He reposted Orban's message, which claimed that the European Commission was allegedly violating European law in broad daylight, and wrote that Viktor has earned his Order of Lenin. End of quote. Hungary's foreign minister Péter Szijjártó rushed to defend his boss. A real war of words began.
We understand that you very much want a war between Russia and Europe. We will not allow ourselves to be dragged into your war. If Russia does not invade again, there will be no such war. But we understand that this time you will be on its side.
The head of Ukraine's foreign ministry, Andriy Sybiha, also responded to Orban's statement very succinctly. He simply called Orban the most valuable frozen Russian asset in Europe. And experts agree with this characterization.
Orban is a puppet of the Kremlin. He recently went to the Kremlin and received the instructions, so there is nothing surprising here. In fact, his foreign minister Szijjártó, who is now called the foreign minister not of Hungary but of the Russian Federation, is constantly in Moscow. And that's why Orban and the entire current Hungarian government are completely under the Kremlin's control, carrying out all the whims dictated to them in the Kremlin.
But no matter how much Orban stomps his feet, the deed is done. Now the EU can no longer stop Hungary. The reparations loan is now closer to being approved. Now, the granting of the loan will be discussed at the meeting of EU leaders, which will take place later this week. The decisive vote on this issue belongs to the Prime Minister of Belgium. After all, most of the frozen Russian assets are held in the Belgian depository Euroclear. But the EU has already warned, if Belgium continues to obstruct this issue, the same approach that was used with Hungary may be applied to it: removal from the decision-making process.
Protests have erupted in Hungary over Viktor Orban's inadequate response to a scandal involving the abuse of children by the head of a correctional facility in Budapest. The case has been dragging on for several years. However, a recently surfaced video shows the facility's chief brutally mistreating those in his care. In response to Orban's soft reaction to the scandalous footage, opposition leader Péter Magyar called on Hungarians to take to the streets and demand Orban's resignation. We'll explain all the details next in our report.
Thousands of Hungarians took to the streets to protest against the country's Prime Minister, Viktor Orban. The reason for the Hungarians' discontent with Orban was his sluggish response to a scandal involving the abuse of children by the head of one of Budapest's correctional facilities. The case itself has been dragging on for several years, but recently, videos of the abuse of children in the facility were leaked.
In the undated video that surfaced earlier this week, it is clear that an official, who until recently served as the acting head of the juvenile correctional facility in Budapest, committed several violent acts. Specifically, he struck a child lying on the ground and slammed another child's head against a table. Since then, the man has resigned and has been taken into custody. This week, the police conducted a raid at the facility, detaining several other individuals.
While the authorities tried to portray the affected minors as criminals, Orban, in an interview with the pro-government publication Mandiner, essentially echoed this position. However, Orban later noted that violence is unacceptable even against convicted individuals.
Opposition leader Péter Magyar, whose TSO party is leading in the polls ahead of the April elections and who organized the protest, called on Orban to resign due to what he described as a failure to protect children in state care.
Yes, the protest in the country erupted 4 months before the new parliamentary elections. So the question arises, could these protests lead to Orban's resignation? In principle, that's where things are heading, because Péter Magyar's main message during this demonstration was that any normal government in Europe, after such abuses are exposed, should resign. However, as is typical for him, Orban is trying to shift the focus from domestic protests to the so-called Ukrainian issue. He started distracting Hungarian society with Ukraine again, once more declaring that it is necessary to go to Brussels and argue that Ukraine should not receive any support. Meanwhile, Bloomberg writes that such a scandal in Hungary is not happening for the first time. A few years ago, Orban's ally, then President of Hungary Katalin Novak, was forced to resign due to public outrage over her decision to pardon a defendant in a pedophilia case at a state-run children's home. However, whether the scandal involving the abuse of children in a correctional facility in Budapest will end with Orban's resignation remains a rhetorical question.
That's all for now. Stay with us to be the first to know what's happening right now. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. See you soon!